Hey guys, Tebow here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Z-23. It's a Tier 7 German destroyer. I got a couple different games here. We're going to do something a little bit different. Instead of just showing games that kind of highlight the offensive characteristics or even the characteristics of the ships in general, I got a couple of games where we're going to be talking about kind of playing the objectives and things to be thinking about when doing so. So the first game we got is on the map Haven, Domination mode game. You can see we spawn on what I call the weak side, where you have 3 to the side of C and then 6 ships to the side of B. So initially my plan here is to swing to the east, try and get kind of an angle around that big island to get eyes on any ships that are coming around there and potentially slow the typical clockwise push that's pretty standard for this map. Now, when you're on the weak side, I don't generally recommend trying to capture the objective you're on, especially in games that have multiple destroyers in them. Multiple meaning more than 2, I guess, in this case, but the odds are very stacked against you. But because we only have 2 here, and we do have one sighted down in A, I'm beginning to suspect that it's possible to make a play for C. We can at least go near it, scout it, see if we see anything, kind of get an eye on the situation, and then evaluate from there. So instead of going around that bigger island like I initially planned, we do kind of turn inward. And you'll often see a lot of ships playing through here if you're trying to get like potential preemptive torps or something. You can kind of put them in this direction. Sometimes you'll get lucky and catch a ship that's making the move that I made there. But we're going to put down a couple of salvos there just to screen that potential gap. If you're trying to get pressure on these objectives early on, you got to think there's only a couple spots where they can really come from. On maps like Haven or Shards, the 2 winged objectives have limited access points. So maps like that, you can kind of put torps down to kind of zone out the potential entrances there. Now, keeping an eye on the radio detection indicator, we do have the closest ship in that general vicinity right there, so I'm going to keep an eye on that position. And what I'm doing here, I'm trying to point away from the ships that could potentially see me. That way, if some destroyer pops up on me quick and I need to bail out of there, I can do so without running into an island. So you do got to kind of plan for that. But because we're spotted here, I can surmise it's the Kagero on the enemy team. That's the only ship that has a better detection. I believe the other destroyer, if I recall, is a Jervis. And because I'm not immediately getting clobbered by those ships that look like they're sailing around the islands, we're just going to push into this Kagero here. And you'll see we do deploy the sonar there. Now, the Z-23 sonar is about 4.5. They all go up by maybe 0.2 or 3 kilometers each. So anywhere from 4 into the Gaide into about 4.5 into the Z-23 is kind of the sweet spot. But that gives you a significant advantage, especially against a ship like the Kagero, which doesn't really have the guns to counter us. Now, we do get a stray torp salvo. It looks like it was probably from a Japanese cruiser or something along those lines, but deploying those torps there, it's what I'm trying to get in the habit of doing is kind of firing one at the indicator when they're moving horizontally close range, because they're really going to, in most cases, do one of 2 things. They're either going to stop or they're going to keep going forward at full speed. There's a range of options they have, but that's 2 of the more common ones. So if you fire one kind of at the indicator or slightly to the inside, and then fire the other one kind of just in front of where they are now, a lot of times they'll stop, and then that torp will catch them when they stop, and they'll smoke, and they think they're safe. So anyway, we're actually able to take out the only destroyer that's contesting C and capture it. Now, it's kind of a bizarre game. Our strong side, we've conceded the capture point there, and on their strong side, they've conceded the capture point on that. So it's kind of a mirror of how this map typically plays in Domination. But you gotta realize most players, battleships, cruisers, they're not going to contest caps early on in the game, which I'm not necessarily saying they should, but if you have games where you have 0 destroyers or maybe 1 destroyer aside or even 2 like this, you know, the dynamic of capping changes from like a multiple 3, 4, 5 destroyer game where usually the caps are going to be heavily contested right off the bat. Now, having captured that one, and we do have someone moving into B, I can see it's being captured, but we're just going to flip this one over. And doing this in domination mode, that's going to give us 3 caps to their 1. That's aside from that week and a half period where the points were all screwed up after the initial German update. You know, nobody really played objectives before that, and they're not as heavily played now as they should be. So if you're putting a focus on that, you're going to win a lot of games. And these German destroyers, I mean, domination mode is really what they shine. That's their native environment. You know, they're great at capturing objectives because they can kind of bully any other destroyer using this radar short range. And, you know, USN destroyer is really strong at capturing points too, but they're kind of at a disadvantage against a German destroyer who knows what they're doing. That's deploying sonar, because they can counter the smoke that the USN destroyer relies on heavily to use their guns effectively and just kind of barrel forward and either knock them out of the cap or knock them out of the game. Now at this point in the game, we're up 3 ships, but we're close enough in proximity to their home spawn. We might as well go ahead and flip this. If you've played more than 10, maybe 20 at the most public games, you should know that the score in terms of how many ships are alive can flip very quickly. So even if you have a lead in terms of ships, I would never sit back or play ultra aggressively. I mean, you should still be thinking what's the best way to win this game. And when you start playing fast and loose because you think you got an insurmountable lead, those are the most frustrating games to lose, and it does happen quite often. So just by flipping this, we're going to get an insurance policy, but by capturing objectives, it forces the enemy to react. They have 2 options. They can either concede the game and not try and counter me capturing this, or potentially capture another objective. Now, they did flip C back, so they did all right there, but for me, they can see I'm capping this. They don't know I'm here, but they can either try and get me out of here, kill me or whatever, or they can just say, well, I guess we're not really trying to win this game. And either of those are favorable for me, because if they're going to come to counter me, especially as a destroyer player, when ships are moving in a hurried fashion to get to an objective that's either being lost or has been lost, and they want to quickly change that situation, they're going to tend to sail in straight lines a lot more than they would if they're playing capture the base mode or they don't have an objective that they're eager to get to. So that's going to help your torp play a lot, just because they're kind of forced by the situation to play or sail in straight lines. And you see there, we were able to clip that New Orleans with its spare torp. Now he's kind of playing with his throttle a little bit, which is fine, but they're not really doing a good job at contesting my capturing of this cap either. And because we do have ships spotting them, I'm able to deploy a smoke. Something you're going to need to keep an eye on with this German smoke, it has very short puffs and they're kind of spaced out, so usually when you're slowing down and you hit the smoke, what's going to happen is the first puff will deploy and then you're going to poke out of that cloud, become detected again, and then it's going to take 2 or 3 seconds before the next puff comes. I think it's 3, maybe 4 puffs at the most that are generated per smoke charge, where a lot of the other smokes that are more effective, it's going to be a lot smaller puffs that are more closely spaced together, so you're less likely to sail out. You can see how there's kind of 2 distinct shapes there. It looks like 3, you know, you can see how there was circles there, and those are the puffs I'm talking about. If you look at those lines on the map, you can see the first puff just disappeared, and now we're in the final one. So keep that in mind. That's one of the low points of the German destroyers, is their smoke. It's not the best smoke charge in the game, but you do get, you know, enough time to deploy your weapons offensively, or you can use them to disengage if you find yourself in a hot situation, which often arises as a destroyer player. I'll go ahead and clip the end of that game. It's just us chasing down that destroyer who decides to run away. But you see, despite only doing 41k damage, we did capture 2 outright and assist capture that second objective, and you get a fairly decent score, about 700 points more than our nearest person on the team. But You can argue maybe that game we would have won anyways had nobody played any objectives, fine. But there's going to be a lot of games where that's not the case. And capturing 3 objectives like that is, it puts the it puts you in the driver's seat in terms of the flow of the game. Again, they're either going to have to concede the game by just saying we're not going to capture these points, you can win on points, and we're just going to screw around trying to shoot things, or they're going to have to react to how you're forcing them to react. So again, if you put an emphasis on those capture points, especially as USN or German destroyers, you're going to find yourself doing a lot better in domination mode games. Now here's kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. I'd say the IJN and to a lesser extent the UK destroyers do better on capture the base mode. USN and Kriegsmarine destroyers do better when they're kind of more set behavioral patterns that are more predictable. So you see there, I just took an odd shot at the Myoko. I just kind of surmised that the destroyer wasn't in the area just based on not getting detected, and I figured if I shot and I was detected, then I'd at least know it was in the area. But we do spot this Indianapolis. Indianapolis is an extremely dangerous ship. You're going to see me pinging the map or the screen a couple times, trying to get people to shoot at them. Now, I think they kind of respond to that early here. Any radar ships should be your #1 focus in Tier 6, 7, even Tier 5 games. Anytime there's a radar cruiser on the enemy team, if you're a cruiser, you're a battleship, you need to kill them. The Indianapolis's radar range is just shy of 10 kilometers, 9.9. Extremely powerful, and you'll see as this game goes on, that becomes very important. So, you know, some people might get mad at me if I spam certain things on the game, but you need to be able to react, and I... whatever. That's all I'm going to say about it. So, here we do move forward, and this Akatsuki was in the middle, but he's kind of backing up for whatever reason, I don't know why. Yeah, but, you know, this is a close range duel here. We should have the clear advantage. I'm just going to try and close the gap here and get within that sonar range. I do have the ships to my right, off to the kind of southwest of the map that could potentially cause damage to me, but until they demonstrate to me that they're actively trying to kill me, I'm comfortable just kind of pushing into him. And you can see he deploys the smoke. Now, that's not going to help him because you can see now I'm undetected, and you can tell that by looking at the map, seeing any other red ships that are in your max range of your guns, and if you don't see any in there, then you're likely to drop from detection. And because that happens, we don't even need to use a smoke, which is very nice. And again, that's going to come in handy as the game comes along here. But I did have to slow down for this torp. I was initially just going to barrel through it, and then I thought, that might actually kill me. But you saw there, the torps that we got into him actually did clip him out, and able to put a couple more shots. That fires failed to him, but again, nobody was really spotting me, so I didn't have an incentive to stop firing my guns. But at this point in the game, I was evaluating what to do. Now, our western side is completely just folded it. You know, maybe there was one ship that died over there. I didn't see who died, but they either just conceded that side of the map and are playing strong on the north side, or the one ship that was down there died. Either way, they have a clear path to my base. Now, the smart play is to go back and defend the base, but it couldn't be a tall order for one destroyer to do. You can't really rely on your teammates. Now, they're close enough to the base at this point in time where if there was an emerging threat, they should be able to respond to it, but capture the base mode, people are completely oblivious to what's going on, and they will not defend the base. Just sometimes out of spite. You'll ask them to on the radio, and they'll say, "Denied!" And then they'll just kind of chuckle to themselves while they sit in the back, buffing their Deweys, losing the game. But I decide, A, because I have ships on both sides of me, turning around is potentially dangerous because I could get spotted. But I'm also this far forward that I thought, what the hell, let's just take a gamble and see if this works. We did get some torps in the Myoko there. I wish I had the AP loaded just a little bit faster. We could just blast this guy 1 or 2 times. But he actually was flooded and ends up flooding out there, so... Again, this is a risky play. Usually I recommend kind of defending your base way more than you should try and capture the enemy base. It's just a much safer play, and the odds are much more in your favor. If you can eliminate the threat to you losing the game and then worry about winning the game, after that. That's usually the best route, again, because if I can't do anything now, if they attempt to capture the base, I'm completely relying on my team. And again, you don't need to have a lot of experience in this game to realize that you can't really rely on your team unless you're playing with division mates that you know that they're reliable players. So, but nevertheless, sometimes you just gotta go for it. I do get some shots on this, or torps towards this King George. Again, I'm not getting into the base yet because that would have alerted him to my presence, but he saw the torp, so obviously knows I'm there. And his guns were turned in the opposite direction, so I figure I got free shots at him. He's the only ship that can really do anything to me at this point, so I'm just going to pepper him with this AP, and you can see with these 150mm guns, you just rip off 3-4K salvos every, 6-7 seconds, and that damage piles up really quickly, so all I'm doing is keeping an eye on his guns. As soon as they get on my position, then I pop the smoke there. Again, you see I am detected for a moment here. That's just because what I explained earlier, those little puffs that don't go off as actively as a lot of the other smoke charges. Again, you're going to typically sail through the front of it, so if you want to mitigate that, you can just hold your fire until you're completely stopped and you're concealed. Usually I'm not that concerned with taking one shot. The King George is a very dangerous ship to destroyers though, so I wouldn't recommend treating that nonchalantly, but most ships, unless they're aimed specifically at you, which usually they're not, you got time to fire a shot, and then by the time the next puff comes out, then you're going to be in cover anyways. And then you can usually just back up a little bit, and if they try and blind fire you, they're going to try and blind fire your last known position, and then you just kind of move back and forth in this cloud. And you can see I'm doing a fair amount of damage, but it's starting to go down, and that's because those two middle sections of the ship, both the hull itself and the superstructure, there's a set amount of hit points in both of those, and as you deplete them, you're going to get less and less damage, and eventually you can actually get to the point where you will not score any more damage. Combine that with the fact that he's using his heal, which is an effective heal on the King George, and we're actually not doing the damage I was hoping for. I'm trying to get my teammates to shoot him, but they're not finishing him off for whatever reason, so I'm in a tough spot now because I have this huge landmass. I can't really escape effectively. We do have some torps towards this Nagato, but he's on the verge of detecting us, and the King George, he just shot at someone else, but he can get his guns on us very quickly once we are detected. There's not a lot I can do. You can see the smoke charge not going to be available for 2.5 minutes, so this is a very tough situation, and I'm desperately relying on my team to help me out here, and they are putting some shots in the Gato. The Gato is the one who spotted me, so because they took him down and I hadn't fired for a little while, I do drop out of detection. But here's the Indianapolis that I was desperately asking early in the game to eliminate. You can see it did take a fair amount of damage, but the fact that it's live is a major problem. It can actually cover the entirety of the captured section here, and you can see he does radar me. Now this is a critical juncture in the game because they have someone on the cap, presumably that battleship. I have all the capture points in my pocket, so if he hits me once, we lose all those capture points, game over. There's 0% chance we can win this. Luckily their RNG combined with my turn, we dodged those shots. I'm pinging them, shoot this guy. This is the game. This is win or lose right here. If you kill that guy, we win. If you don't, we lose. Luckily his radar runs out and I get briefly undetected, but then there's another plane here. And you can see they are putting shots into him now, which is good. He decides he's going to take a more reliable shot at that other destroyer. That other destroyer doesn't have as much capture points as I do, but he probably has a fair amount. So either one of us getting shot is a major detriment. Again, we have no way to reset our base. This is the risk you always take when you're attempting to capture the base. All it takes is getting shot once and you lose the game. Whereas if we're focusing on defending the base, they have the conundrum there, so you'd rather the majority of your team defend and maybe put some pressure on their cap offensively, but in this case it just kind of worked out. Now here, this Benson, I was very wary of him. Again, a lot of bad experiences with randos. I thought he was going to put down the smoke to cover the ships behind him and then pull forward trying to get damage or whatever, you know, some stupid stuff that randoms tend to do. He does a great job, though. He sits in the smoke and remains undetected, and that allows us to capture. I do believe they have the destroyer and the battleship in our capture point, our home base, so very easily could have lost that one if either I or the Benson had gotten shot. But because we played that well and had a little bit of luck, we were actually able to win that game. So I hope that was a good look at playing the objectives for you guys. If you did like the video, please hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. There's a lot of World of Warships coming all the time. Questions for me, comments, leave them below. I'd love to hear from you guys. And we'll see y'all later. Alright, peace.